Hello, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Today, doing something a little bit different. No new deck, no new gameplay for you. Instead, I'm going to be taking a look back at some of my older videos. Now, I've been at this YouTube thing for about 6 months now, lots of videos on my channel, and in those videos, I'd like to believe there are some pretty good plays once in a while. That being said, there are also plenty of punts. So, today, with the help of the awesome comments from my friends and from the viewers, I'm going to be taking a look at some of those mistakes that I've made in those videos, trying to talk about those mistakes, and hopefully learning something from those mistakes so that I can become a slightly better player. Hopefully, it'll help you as well. Now, when it comes to mistakes, there are lots of reasons why we might make mistakes. You know, your head's not in the game, you're unfamiliar with the card, you're distracted, whatever the excuse is, you've heard them all. But I don't think you need to make excuses, right? We just got to own the mistake, analyze it, figure out why we made that mistake, and then try not to make that mistake going forward. All in an effort to hopefully, improve our win rate by 1 or 2%. Now, before I talk about some of the more unique situations, I want to take a look at some of the mistakes that I personally made that, I should never have made. All right, starting off with an embarrassing one for me. Got a great comment from Christian here. They say, just attack with both creatures. You can't miss plays like that. And I 100% agree with Christian. I don't know what was going through my head in this moment. Take a look at the board state. The opponent's tapped out. They're at 3 life. They have 1 blocker. And I have 2 4/4 attackers. It's so simple. Just attack. But what do I do instead? I only attack with the apparition, they chump block, I put out 2 seasoned hollow blades, and pass the turn to the opponent, giving them a chance to draw something that could drastically change the state of the game. Now, 99% of the time, I don't think anybody's going to miss this play. I hope that I wouldn't miss this play that often, but there's still that 1% of the time that maybe you have a lapse in judgment, who knows what's going through your head at that moment, and you might just miss something that's right in front of your eyes. I think it's really important to try to minimize the frequency of situations like this, and maybe just do things like a quick mental check at the start of your turn, something as simple as, well, what would happen if I just swung out? Or, what does the state of the board look like right now? By doing that, hopefully, we can play a little bit sharper and make better decisions that will help increase our overall win percentage by even just a couple of percent. Here is another situation where I miss lethal on board. It's not as apparent as it was in the last clip, but it's still pretty obvious. Take a look at the board state. My opponent has 1 untapped mana, 7 life, and 1 card in hand. They have a 5/4 creature, but they just attacked me with that creature. I go to my upkeep and I untap. I have a Crypt Lurker, a 3/4. I also have a Scythe that has 3 counters on it, which I can very easily equip to the Lurker for 1, giving it +3/+3, bumping it up to a 6/7. Now I just need to find 1 more point of damage, and conveniently I have 2 enchantments on the field that both achieve that. The Goblin Oriflame will give +1/+0 to the Lurker when it attacks, giving it 7 damage, all that it needs. And even if I didn't have the Oriflame on the field, I have a makeshift munition and enough mana to activate it, which means I could attack for 6, sack the Lurker, and ping the opponent for the last point of damage. Now, why did I make this mistake? I think it's a situation of tunnel vision. On the previous turn, the opponent had played out the Elemental. I had Finishing Blow in my hand, and I kind of had it in my head that, I have to use the Finishing Blow to kill the Elemental. I didn't reevaluate my strategy when my opponent attacked on their turn. And because of that, I made a play that eventually led me into a very bad position. And it was such a terrible position because in the end, the opponent was able to find the answers to delay my win and eventually top deck a card that gave them the win by dealing 6 damage directly to my face. I was heartbroken. But that's what happens when you miss lethal. Alright, in this next clip, I again miss a pretty easy lethal that I think anybody who is familiar with this team or flash deck wouldn't have missed, and I think it boils down to 3 elements. Number 1, misevaluation of threats. Number 2, tunnel vision. And number 3, an unfamiliarity with the cards in my deck. So as soon as the opponent shocks in that stomping ground, bringing themselves down to 13, bells should be ringing off in my head saying, you have lethal. You have a 5/6 Torrential Gearhulk on board, and you have a Magma Opus in hand, which you can certainly cast out at the end of their turn. It represents 8 damage. You can deal 4 damage to any target, and it creates a 4/4. That's 13 damage. Instead, I see the opponent play out a Chandra. bells ring off in my head for the Chandra because it's a pretty powerful card, and a lot of the time you want to focus on killing that card. However, if you're able just to kill your opponent on the next turn, the Chandra is kind of irrelevant. Instead, I fixate on the Chandra. I decide to kill one Bone Crusher Giant, tap down the other Bone Crusher Giant, and deal 1 damage to the Chandra, also tap the Chandra, which was just silly, and I was doing it kind of for fun to see if I could tap a Planeswalker. Still, I missed lethal. I did kill the Chandra, but I allowed 1 Bone Crusher Giant to live. The opponent is not dead, and well, yeah, I drew 3 cards, but those 3 cards could have been land, land, land. Instead, I did draw very well, but if I had drawn poorly, the opponent would have had a very good turn. They would have played out that Primal Command, gained 7 life, got a very key creature from their deck that they could have played out next turn, and the whole course of the game could have changed. Instead, I kind of had to get lucky again, drawing a second Magma Opus, being able to get lethal on the next turn, and really it was a situation that should never have arisen if I had just focused on dealing lethal when I had the opportunity to do so. Alright, those first 3 clips featured some pretty easy lethal misses that I think the majority of us wouldn't make most of the time. However, mistakes do happen. We're not perfect. So I think it's important to recognize those mistakes, talk about them, and just keep them in the back of our heads so that we don't make those mistakes in the future. Next, I want to talk about some more interesting lethal misses with the help of these great comments that were on some of my other videos. Alright, this clip features a miss lethal with Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose, and when I look at this clip, I know exactly what was going through my head at this moment. When I look at this board state, I see I have 18 life, the opponent has 11 life, and I have 2 flyers. I'm definitely setting up for a 2-turn lethal. So what do? I play out my Youthful Valkyrie, pump up my other Youthful Valkyrie, attack the opponent for 6, bring him down to 5, and like I said, setting up for a lethal on the next turn. But as Clayton says, on turn 5, use Vito's ability for lifelink, swing with everyone, and life gain wins the game. Clayton is 100% right here. What I needed to be doing is put out the Temple Garden, shock it in, activate Vito's ability, give all 3 creatures lifelink, and just swing with all 3. The Youthful Valkyrie and the Resplendent Angel are going to get in the air for 5, and then they're going to gain 5 life. And Vito, even if he's blocked, is going to also gain 1 life. That's a total of 6 life gained, 5 damage guaranteed to get in, for a total of 11 damage. I should never have let the opponent get another turn in this situation. Now, why did I make that mistake? Well, admittedly, I'm a little unfamiliar with Vito, and I probably completely forgot, definitely completely forgot, in fact, that Vito had an activated ability that could have won the game for me. So the more you play a deck like this, the more familiar you're going to become with the cards, and you know what, your chances of missing a lethal like this are probably going to decline. So play the decks a lot, get familiar with them, and you shouldn't miss things like this too often. Alright, this next clip is going back to Modern, Dimir Zombies, and I think the miss lethal here is actually quite similar to the last clip with Vito. Now, the situation's a little bit different. In that clip, I was at 18 life and feeling alright. In this case, I'm at 4 life against a burn player with plenty of mana, 2 cards in hand, and they're going to draw another card. I'm in trouble. I need to find lethal as soon as possible. Now, I didn't see what was right in front of my face, but Spirit Thalia did. They say you had lethal at 5950. Play both captains, attack, and ping them. Well, what did I need to do? I needed to play out the Diregraph Captain with my mana, which I did. Then, with my Aether Vial, I need to play out the other Diregraph Captain. That would give me a 3/3 Carrion Feeder and a 5/4 Garrul's Messenger. I can attack them for 8, bringing them down from 16 to 8. And then things get a little bit more complicated. I needed to use the Carrion Feeder's ability to sacrifice any creature. I can sacrifice the Garrul's Messenger. When that happens, the 2 Diregraph Captains are going to ping the opponent from 8 down to 6. Then, the Garrul's Messenger, because it didn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, is going to return from the graveyard to the battlefield, deal 2 more damage to the opponent, bring them down from 6 to 4. Then, I can use the Carrion Feeder to once again sacrifice the Garrul's Messenger. The 2 captains, again, dealing 2 more damage to the opponent, bringing the opponent down from 4 down to 2. And then, the Garrul's Messenger doesn't come back this time because I had a +1/+1 counter on it, but I can sacrifice the Carrion Feeder to itself. Again, the 2 Diregraph Captains are going to trigger, deal 2 more damage to the opponent, bringing them from 2 down to 0, and allowing me to win the game. Instead, I play it very safe. I use the Aether Vial to play out a Garrul's Messenger, and the game drags on for a lot longer. I'm playing against Burn and I'm at 4 life. This game could end at literally any moment. I got lucky, the opponent drew quite poorly, but I had no right stealing a win in this situation. Now, this next clip doesn't exactly show a miss lethal, but it shows a decision that I made that put me in a worse position overall. Topen's comment questions why I would put out the Ceratops on this turn. Let's look at the board state. In this case, I have 4 mana. In hand, I have a Troll, an Elf, and a Ceratops. Really, I have 2 choices. I can put out the Ceratops for 4, or I can put out the Troll plus the Llanowar Elf. In my case, I decided to play out the Ceratops, but by doing that, what am I really achieving? The Ceratops has a great activate ability that I can't take advantage of this turn because I only have 4 mana, and really I'm just putting the Ceratops out onto the field and leaving it completely vulnerable. In fact, on my opponent's next turn, they use a Lava Coil to kill it before it can have any impact on the game. Then the opponent is able to get a Phoenix out of the graveyard. They have 10 damage on board, and they decide to swing at me, setting up a 2-turn clock. I think they do this because they are comfortably at 11 life. I have a 3/3 and a 4/4 on board, so I'm representing 7 damage with the potential of 9 damage if I draw a land. It's not 11 damage, so I think they probably feel safe and they're comfortable with this gamble. Now imagine I went the other way with my last turn. Instead of putting out the Ceratops, I put out the Troll and the Elf. I think the opponent probably would have followed a very similar line. They certainly would have used the Lava Coil, and in that case, I think they probably would have hit the Troll or the Mammoth with the Lava Coil. I don't imagine the opponent would have valued the Llanowar Elf because it's just a 1/1, and at this point in the game, it's getting pretty close. They know they have lethal next turn. They want to take out as much power from the board as they possibly can. So if they left me with 5 mana, 4 from lands, 1 from the Llanowar Elf, on the next turn, I'm able to play out the Ceratops and give it haste, therefore getting full immediate value with the Ceratops. And in fact, it would have been lethal because I would have had the Mammoth on board, a Troll, and the Ceratops, or I would have had a Troll, another Troll, and a Ceratops, depending on what creature they destroyed. Now, also, let's imagine that they did value the Llanowar Elf and they end up using the Lava Coil to kill the Llanowar Elf. Well, it still at least gives me a chance to draw a land off the top of my deck, therefore giving me 5 mana to be able to put out the Ceratops and give it immediate value with haste. Also, would have left me with a board state of a 3/3, a 4/4, and another 4/4, which could have been pretty crazy if I did draw land, pumping up the Mammoth. Overall, I think it was pretty clear that putting out the Ceratops on the previous turn was certainly the wrong line to follow, and in the end, it cost me the game. This next clip isn't so much a huge misplay, it is more of a piece of advice if you find yourself using a Prowess or a Magecraft deck in the future. Brandon O says, you might find that using Defiant Strike or any other instant withdraw is better used in the main phase in case you draw a sorcery that can continue the trade. What Brandon means by this is that if you go to combat and you use Defiant Strike as a combat trick, you're going to draw a card. But the card that you draw could be a sorcery like Crash Through or Warlord's Fury. You can't cast that spell because you're already in combat. So instead, what you should be doing is, in your first main phase, use the Defiant Strike then. You don't have to use it as a combat trick. Just use it as a way of drawing a card and pumping up your creatures with Prowess and Magecraft. Then, if you draw a Crash Through, you can play that card out, pump up your creatures again, draw another card, it might be the card you're looking for, and you can keep playing cards instead of stranding yourself in the middle of combat because you decided to use Defiant Strike as a combat trick. Now for the last clip in this little video, it's another piece of advice, this time focusing on the learn mechanic. Topan says this, there might be a way to win this game by casting First Aid Class and using the other ability of learn to discard and then draw a card. Like you said, you could still draw into more cantrips for the win at this point. Let's read exactly what Learn says. It says, you may reveal a lesson card from you own from outside the game and put it into your hand, or discard a card and draw a card. Let's face it, most of the lesson cards are pretty lackluster and they're not going to have much of an impact on most games. If you're in a situation like I'm in this clip, your opponent has a huge board, you have a couple of impactful creatures on the board, and you basically have to win on this turn. Well, you have to take the best chance you can at winning the game, and in this case, getting a Inkling Summoning, I believe is a card, into my hand isn't going to help me do anything. Also, this Luris, honestly, is not going to do very much for me. So what I should do in this case is play the First Day of Class, pitch the Lurrus and hope to draw into something like another Warlord's Fury or a Crash Through. I'm making a ton of creatures with the Pyromancer on the field, and the Light Scribe is pumping them all up with its Magecraft, therefore giving me the best chance to maybe steal a win here if I'm able to chain into 3 or 4 cards in a row. It's unlikely, but it's at least a possibility that I could do it, whereas doing the other line is certainly not going to win. Okay, so those are just some of the things that I've been able to learn by going back and looking at some of my old clips and also reading your wonderful comments. I might make some of those mistakes again going forward, but I think I'll be a little bit less likely to repeat some of those mistakes now that I've talked about them in this video. I also hope this video has been able to help you pick up on some things and maybe tighten up your MTG play a little bit. Also, this video was quite difficult to make, so I would appreciate any feedback. Let me know what you think about it, and if I should maybe try to do this again in the future after I accumulate even more mistakes in the next couple of months. Anyways, take care for now. Enjoy your week. See you in the next one.